One, two, three. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Entrepreneur Life Podcast, your go-to podcast for all things entrepreneurship, accounting, and lifestyle. Today, I have with me Ricardo Rivero. Ricardo is an investor and tech entrepreneur who has designed and built tech solutions across different industries, including defense, finance, food, and entertainment. Ricardo's focus on analyzing and building companies is on how to provide as much value as possible to the end users while leveraging a systematic approach of breaking down a high-level product vision into implementable features that will connect with the user. So excited you're here.
Hey, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Tell everybody like who you are, where you're from, background.
Well, I'm from San Diego, born and raised there. Moved to Miami about a year and a half ago. Loving it here. It's completely different environment for me. Even though it's very similar, they're both on the beach. It's a completely different energy here. I'm loving it here. Started creating apps about 6 years ago. Been doing that. Got into investing a couple years ago as well. They actually go hand in hand a lot. But yeah, basically my focus currently is on building apps and building currently AI solutions. It's the hotness right now.
AI, yeah, for real. Yeah. If you're not on Chat GPT, what are you doing with your life right now?
What are you doing, right? You're getting your job taken is what you're doing.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. What is your background? Like, I know you're in tech and you build apps. Like, did you study tech? Like, what do you do to like get there?
Yeah, so we can do an entire podcast on my education story. It's a long one, but basically I started off going to school for aerospace engineering, which is kind of like rocket science. And I flunked out casually, rocket science, right? I actually flunked out after 1 year because I thought it was too difficult. Yeah. And I spent a couple years kind of wondering what I should do with my life. Yeah. I went back to school for electrical engineering, and I specifically chose that because it was the most difficult, and I wanted to prove myself that I can do it. Yeah. And it was also far enough away from software because I didn't want to create apps, funnily enough. Yeah. But it was also close enough to computers because I was kind of a computer nerd. Mm-hmm. So I chose electrical engineering for those reasons, crushed it, and then ended up, when I started my professional career, going into software. Mm-hmm. And it was a completely different experience because I had an amazing mentor. 2 mentors actually changed my life. And they I was kind of called or, led back to software. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing it ever since. Completely different, completely changed my life.
And how did you find your mentors? I think it's so important, like when you're an entrepreneur, to have a mentor.
Yes.
Did you find them or did they find you?
By some of the worst situations that I was in, actually. So I started off in defense, working for a defense company. And to work there, you need a security clearance from the government. And my security clearance got denied. And, yeah. So when that happened, I had already been working for the company for about 3 weeks, and I had impressed so many people in just those 3 weeks that they said, okay, we're not going to fire you, but we can't leave you where you're at. We're going to have to move you to a different program. Okay. That program had just hired a seasoned software engineer and another new grad, and they put us 3 together, and that software engineer ended up being the mentor for me and the other. And the other junior engineer, I mean, we were both new grads, but he was such a high value person. Yeah. Like, he was one of my mentors. He became one of my mentors as well. To this day, I'm like, when I'm going through a tough situation, sometimes I still think, hey, what would Herman do? Yeah. How would Herman handle this? Because, I mean, he didn't know everything at the time. We were both figuring stuff out. We were both new grads, right? But he had this sort of systematic approach to solving problems that, I mean, it's to this day, like, it still works for everybody. And I think a lot of high functioning people, I mean, you don't know everything. Nobody knows everything. A lot of people don't know anything, but you have a systematic approach to where if you have a situation, you kind of put whatever situation you're in into your system, and then that's how you figure out how to approach it, how to solve a problem.
That's great. I think there's like so many things that can be pulled from your story. And one of them is like, everyone I know who's a high value, high functioning entrepreneur had 1 or 2 backgrounds. Either they had some sort of direct sales, network marketing experience, and or out of college, they went into a corporate environment. And I think that so many, especially with like the younger generation, they just want to like start off being entrepreneurs, start off being CEO. But there's so much value to be had in going from school into a corporate environment, even if it's only for 2 years, 3 years, whatever, in not only like connecting with people and building those relationships with high value people, but also learning systems. You learn a lot of things in a corporate environment that you will never learn on your own as an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah, that's definitely true. I
It's
mean,
a huge value add.
another reason why I went into engineering is because I knew I wanted to start a business,
Yeah.
but I didn't know what to do. And I figured that if I could do engineering, I could create a product, I could invent something and sell that, and it could have my backing. Like I created this so I can sell it.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what to do. So I went into, engineering. I went into that corporate environment. And yeah, I mean, I got blessed. I got placed with amazing people around me, and that were supportive, that were teachers, that were mentors. And that really jump-started me as an entrepreneur. I ended up starting my first company with Herman, with the guidance of that same mentor.
Amazing.
So yeah, that being placed in that room completely changed the trajectory of my life.
Wow. There, again, so many nuggets there. Like proximity is everything, right?
Yeah.
But corporate environments it's a love-hate relationship, right? But like corporate environments have a structure. If you're in a corporate environment, there's systems, there's SOPs, there's workflows, there's an order of operations. And those are things that you need to have a successful business on your own. So going into an environment where that already exists is a good place to learn that. Even if you only spend a year there, I think there's a benefit there.
Yeah, and actually I only did spend a year there, but I learned so much in that time, and they gave me so much opportunity that after 1 year, my resume was completely stacked.
Wow.
So I could go work anywhere.
Yeah.
And at that point, I could choose where I wanted to work, and I could pick and choose, okay, roles that are going to have responsibilities that I could actually learn something from and take into my business.
Yeah.
So I was able to pick and choose. I was able to be choosy, be
picky.
Yeah, be picky. And I had leverage when I would talk to recruiters, when I would talk to other jobs, and I would say, hey, I'm not going to work there unless you offer me this opportunity to lead a team, to manage things, to design things, to architect things. All those are skills that I was able to take into business.
Yeah, so good. And you shared a story with me about a dream that you had with some math problem. I think that's like such a cool story. Can you tell them about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple instances when I was in college. When I studied electrical engineering, some of those problems are deep, extremely long. Like they can take up to 10 pages to solve the problem. Jeez. And sometimes you get stuck.
Yeah.
So I'm also the type of person where if I get stuck, I'm not going to stay up all night, try to fix it. Or sometimes I'll be in a meeting and the people I'm in the meeting with want to solve a problem right away. And I'll say, hey guys, let's step away. Let's think about it. Let's sleep on it. Come back to it with a fresh mind, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes I would get stuck on a problem, be up until midnight, 2 a.m. And I'm like, okay, I can't solve this. I'll come back to it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And there was at least a couple instances where I would sleep. I would have this dream that in my dream, I'm solving the problem. Mind you, the problem is like 10 pages long. It's not something that you can just remember off the top of your head.
Yeah.
So, but in my dream, I'm solving this problem exactly as it is, right? And then I get the answer. I wake up, I jump out of bed, I ran to my desk, and I solved the problem, and it was the correct answer. Amazing.
It's so good. And I think, Chris Valentin has similar stories of running his mechanic business where he's like, yeah, there was an issue with a car and there was no record of the part in the manual. And the Lord gave me a picture in my head. And then I went and people are like, that's not in the manual. It's not how you do it. And it was actually, they had not put this one part in the manual.
Yeah.
And it's like, so many people don't realize what's available to them. Like you get to ask God for dreams to solve your problems. Yeah. You can say, God, give me solutions for my problems and my dreams. And I think so many times we get more of what we steward well. And so if you want problems and solutions, rather not problems, if you want solutions in your dreams, like start a dream journal, be recording, be writing out what happens in your dreams, because what we steward well, we get more of.
Yeah.
And I have a dream journal. Even last night I had, a really wild dream about a problem that I'm facing. And I woke up and I wrote out the dream, and it's in usually the writing of the dream that I'll get like the interpretation of the dream.
Oh, 100%. I think writing is so important because we have so many thoughts. Like I think we average 100,000 thoughts a day.
Yeah.
Someone like myself probably averages like 1 million thoughts a day, but they're so scattered. They can be so scattered and unfocused. But if you write it down, you can actually focus your thoughts and understand what you're actually thinking, what your actual needs are, right? If you haven't asked to God, you can actually focus this energy. Where focus goes, energy flows.
Right.
So writing is really important just to organize your own thoughts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally. Amazing. Yeah. So tell them like, what is your business? Like, what do you do? How did you go from corporate, tech world, defense world to what you're doing now? Yeah.
So, I mean, at the core, I make apps. So I've made apps from scratch. I'm on my third app currently. That can either be me coming up with an idea that I think is going to be the next big thing, and I make an app about it, or I've had people come to me and say, hey, I have an idea for an app. Can you help me with it?
Yeah.
And I'll make the app for them, like as a client. Mm-hmm. So I can do either or. At this stage in my life, in my career, this season, prefer not to do that. I prefer to, start a company by myself and, create an app, but then create a business out of it. Yeah. And I think that's something a lot of people don't understand is that, I have an idea for an app. Everybody has an idea for an app. Number one, it probably already exists. If it doesn't, somebody's probably tried it and they face challenges that they couldn't make it into a business, because there's a difference between making an app and making a business out of it. These days you can have an app made for you for like $10,000, maybe $20,000 max. There's services like Upwork where if I have an idea for an app, I can have somebody make it. They'll find contractors in a different company, make it, or in a different country, make it for cheap.
Right.
So that's not the problem. The difficulty in making an app is turning it into an actual business. And that's not just about profitability or bringing in revenue. There's the entire concept. There's the entire flow of actually operating a business that a lot of people don't know about. A lot of people don't have.
So would you say that like it's better to have a business, build the business, and then create an app that goes with the business, or that helps the business operate? Or it's better to like have your idea, build your app, and then build the business around the app?
So for most people, probably the first one. Probably start your business and think about how technology can help you.
Okay.
For some people, it would be best to, hey, I have a great idea for an app. I'm going to create it, but the execution in creating the business is on the business side, not the app. What you'll probably find if you go that route is that making the app is the easy part. Finding your user base is the hard part. Marketing is the hard part. Finding your business partners is the hard part. So it becomes very, very complex. And that's, even if you're going to go that route, you need to have an entrepreneur background or an entrepreneur mindset at least, because you're going to come across so many challenges that you need to solve from the business perspective, and then implementing it in the app or in the technologies is actually the easy part. These days, technology is so advanced, apps are so advanced that nobody's making anything from scratch. We're building on top of previous stuff, right? We're building on top of what's already existing.
Okay.
So if you want to create your business, even if you go app first, it's still business mind first. And then how can I leverage technology? How can I leverage existing technology and build that into my app to make the business vision a reality?
Interesting. I know there's this new Christian dating app that some people from my school, they had created this like Facebook group for Christians who wanted to date, who also wanted to be around other people who were like filled with the Spirit and whatever, right?
Right.
And the group blew up. It just got so big that they're like, okay, let's turn this into an actual, like an app. But before that, they made it into a website, right? Where you have a profile and whatever. Like it wasn't an app yet. I think they just launched the app. But before that, they made the website. And so I just kind of watched like the organic way that this was all happening. I had never seen kind of the flow of that before, right? It's like I made a Facebook group. The Facebook group blew up to over 5,000 people. So they knew they had a user base. They knew that people wanted what they were doing. Yeah. You know what I mean? So then they made the website, and then so that at least got people to like create profiles and have accounts and whatever. And then they were able to build the app. Would you say that's like a good kind of workflow for that? Or you're like,
that's a great way. Yeah. And that's a great way to start. That's a great way to get your feet wet. And it's funny you say that started on Facebook, because that's actually how Facebook started. Facebook started at one school, right? Mark Zuckerberg created the app, and he actually made it to rate, I think it was like to rate girls at his school, at his other school, like 1 out of 10. And then he kind of expanded on that. Yeah. And then he added, like chat capabilities or whatever other features, the early features Facebook had. He expanded it to 2 schools. It was growing. And then I think he expanded it to the entire Ivy League before opening it up to all colleges. General public, yeah. And then general public. So that's really good, because you can focus, every business needs to focus on a niche first. Like I can say, my app, anybody can use it. But to start off, I need to focus on a niche. I need to prove the concept and show that people actually want to use this and it has value to them. And then from there, you can expand out. But it's always helpful to start with a niche and build it out that way. But that's a really great organic way of doing it, because the next step for a lot of apps, for a lot of these technology companies, is to raise money so that you can scale. So if you have a user base, no matter how small, if it's 5 people, if it's 100 people, you can show an investor, hey, people actually care about my app. They're using it. Can I get $1 million? Can I get $10 million? That money's not for me. That money is to hire 2-3 more engineers. It's to hire a couple people in sales, to partner with maybe social media influencers or whatever it is to actually grow the app. Once that's proven out, I can go back to investors, either the same ones or a different set of investors. And I can say, hey, look at all these people using my app. Can I get $1 billion? With that $1 billion,
It's like Shark Tank.
Yeah, it's like exactly like Shark Tank. Yeah. With that $1 billion, I'm going to hire a full staff and we're going to scale nationwide. And investors, when they do this, I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's, relatively easy to get investors to, if you have a proven concept and your business actually has users, your app actually has users, they'll invest in you because they're expecting massive returns, like 30 to 50 times returns on their investment.
Interesting.
Because apps can scale so greatly. It takes relatively little input to get more users on your app once you have the concept proven out.
So like if you're a business owner and you're like, okay, I have this idea or I have this company and I want to make it an app, do you hire, like you said, you could hire somebody on Upwork, right? They would design the app, but then like you still need people to maintain the app and to do updates and bug fixes and all the things that we see with like App Store things, like you're talking about hiring salespeople and engineers and all that. Do you just hire a company and they already have all of that? Or like,
you can, these
what
days
does that
also
look like?
Yeah, these days there's a lot of as a service companies. So if you already have a business and you want to, leverage technology for it, I might hire a CTO and let the CTO hire a couple engineers.
What does CTO stand for?
Chief Technology Officer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they would manage the entire technology side of the business. And CTOs are kind of a visionary. So I might say, hey, I want to take my app and use some technology with it.
Yeah.
I hire the CTO and they're a visionary and they're like, okay, well, we can use technology for this. We can use technology for that.
Brilliant.
Do an app for this, a website for that, so they're kind of a visionary as well. But they would manage the entire technology side and they could choose to hire engineering staff to maintain, or they can choose to contract things out. Yeah. Or outsource. Yeah.
Okay.
So that would be one avenue of doing it. Another way would be just to outsource directly. You can actually hire CTOs as a service now, where it's not a full-time CTO.
Right.
He's not part of my staff.
Yeah.
But I'm paying, as a contractor for his CTO services. These days, everything you can do as a service.
Yeah. In accounting world, it's CFOs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm familiar. So like, do you want to talk about the app that you're building? Or is that a secret?
No, it's not a secret. So I am building an AI-based, we call it productivity tracker, with a social aspect, with a one-on-one coaching aspect. So this kind of came to me, and this is another, I guess, great organic way that an app idea can come to you. I wanted to make this app for myself with no intention of anybody else even using it. For convenience, I just wanted a productivity tracker which worked my way. And there's already productivity trackers out there.
Right.
There's already like note-taking tools, which you can use, Evernote, for example. But they didn't do exactly what I want. So I told myself, hey, I'll make this as for fun so I can learn new technology as well. And I can use it for myself. Yeah. But I was facing an issue where I didn't want to have to fill out a form for everything I did during the day. And that's kind of the problem with that's a challenge that a lot of apps try to face, right? Because you want to make something very useful, but you also want to make it simple. Right. People who use mobile apps, they want simplicity and they want it to be fast. I think there's a rule that says if somebody downloads your app and they're not hooked within the first 7 seconds, they're going to delete it or they'll never use it again. Right. So things need to be very simple. So the challenge I was facing was, how can I make this simple but useful? Because if I'm just taking notes, it's not useful. If I am filling out a form, it's too complicated. Right. For filling out a form for everything. Time suck. Yeah, you don't want that either, right?
We don't like time sucks.
So then it's funny because right now we mentioned AI is the hotness. It's the hot, buzzword. Yeah. And anytime there's a buzzword like that, I'm kind of timid about it because it can just be a buzzword. It can be a passing fad, right? And I felt that way a little bit about crypto, not because the technology isn't great. I think crypto technology is fantastic, but there's no real products around it. Okay. I'm like, where's the real product, right? And actually, when the internet first came out, some people called it a fad. Some very prominent economists call it a fad. They said nobody's ever going to use this. It's not useful for real purposes, right? If you think about when the internet first came out, it was just chat, it was email, and it was like the news maybe, right? AIM, yeah. AOL Instant Messenger. Yeah, I could. BRB, TTYL, XO. Yeah, all that
big
stuff.
Letter, small letter, big letter.
Yeah.
Millennials.
Millennials know, right? Yeah, I'll admit, even myself, I could never imagine what it came to become today. Like, I couldn't imagine shopping on the internet was like unsafe. all these things, right? But people like Jeff Bezos building Amazon, they built real products, right? Amazon.com became a real product, or people started building actual real products on the internet, and it became this behemoth that we can't imagine living without today, right?
Right.
So when crypto kind of became the buzzword, I'm like, okay, this is amazing, but where's the products? There's no real products right now, right?
Okay.
Now, fast forward to AI, I'm like, okay, AI is cool, ChatGPT is awesome, but ChatGPT is just a chat. Where's the products, right? So I was kind of skeptical about it.
Me too. I'm like, where's the products?
Yeah, where's the products? Yeah. Where's the products, right? So then I have my app that I'm making, and I'm like, okay, how can I do this without forums? GPT was the answer, because I can just type in my notes to GPT, and GPT knows exactly what I'm doing.
Okay.
I can extrapolate information, because AI is actually interesting. It's not that smart on its own, but you can teach it anything. It's kind of like a person. If you don't teach a person anything, they won't know anything, but you can teach them anything. Well, AI doesn't know anything on its own, but you can teach it everything. So I can teach it to become my assistant. I can tell it, I went to the gym and I did 225 on bench. It knows bench is a chest exercise. It knows it's a strength exercise. It knows that I went to the gym. It can extrapolate all this information and become a useful assistant. So that was the power for me in AI, and I can turn this potentially, this tool into a product, right? So that's where I'm at right now.
Interesting. Is there a timeline on when this goes live or public, or are we in beta mode, or are you still in development?
Yeah, no, I'm still in development, and that's a great question, because whenever you do come up with an app, you do have to we come up with something called a roadmap.
Okay.
And we say, okay, which features do I need to launch? Which features do I need to launch a prototype to prove my concept, to get users on the app? Once I have users, I can get feedback from the users, find out what they need to scale to get more users, and then to scale the app. So I'll put all these things on what I call a roadmap, and then kind of timeline it out from there. Currently, my prototype is probably 2 months out. Once the prototype is complete, I can get some real users on it to get some real feedback and continue implementing whatever features I think it needs to launch fully. But at any stage in that process, I can actually go out and get investors. There's actually technology companies that don't even have a prototype. They just have a 10-page slide deck. This is my idea. And they can go out and get investment with just that slide deck, just their idea, yeah. And at that stage, typically they'll get maybe $100,000 or $200,000. The founder of the company can use that $100,000 to have a prototype made from Upwork, right?
Okay.
So that's what they would use that money for.
Yeah.
And then once they have that prototype, they can go out and get additional investment, get a full-time engineer, get a full-time salesperson, that sort of thing. But depending on which stage you're at in the app, in developing the app, you can go out and get a different amount of money.
Okay.
And it'll be for like 10% of the company. So you do give away some
like
of
Shark
the equity.
Tank.
Yeah, exactly like Shark Tank. You do give away.
That's my only reference point for all of this.
I've only seen a couple episodes of Shark Tank, but that's exactly how it works.
Yeah.
And it's not just Shark Tank. There's tons of.
We want 300,000 for 2.5%.
Yeah. Exactly.
And the sharks are like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
20%.
Yeah, and there's some companies that go on there and you're like, okay, this product isn't cool, but the shark sees the vision.
They have a vision.
They see the vision, or they see the potential, and they invest in that at extremely high risk, because at any point, tech company or not, retail company, whatever it is, it can fail.
Yeah.
And there's a high probability that it will fail. So actually what investors often invest in isn't the product, isn't the idea, it's actually the founder.
The people. The
people, yeah, because they want to see people that can solve problems.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly, no matter how good my planning is, no matter how good my product is, I'm going to face challenges, and I'm going to need to pivot.
Right.
And they want to see, can this person pivot? Can this person make a tough decision? If things get tough, if I hire 5 people and things are going good and the economy turns or the industry turns on me, will I be able to make the tough decision to, lay some people off? Will I make the right decision on who to lay off? All those are decisions that every founder is going to have to make. Every CEO is going to have to make.
Right. So
the founders are investing in that person, that they can make those decisions and continue to grow the app or to grow the business.
So interesting. My parents are like diehard Shark Tank fans. They watch it like every Friday. I think it's Fridays that it comes on, but they always watch it. And every time I go to their house, because usually I go like on a weekend, you know, and they'll be like, "We're watching Shark Tank tonight." Okay. Like my mom's met actually a couple of the sharks at different events.
Oh, really? That's cool. Yeah. And another thing about Shark Tank or any kind of investor is that they don't just give you the money; they actually support you.
Right.
with every.
I think that's almost more valuable.
100% it is.
Than
Yeah.
the money. You can get money from anybody, but it's the mentorship and the connections.
Mentorship and the connections exactly.
That they have. That's the value.
So if I'm looking for an investor for my app, I'm gonna want an investor who has a connection or has a presence in the AI space, because if I need support in AI, they can guide me to somebody. If I need to hire a contractor, they can guide me to somebody.
Yeah.
If I need, whatever support I need, they're going to try to help me because it's in their best interest. They're not just giving me money, right? They want me to be successful.
They want you to be profitable.
Exactly. They want their investment
to work out. They have a vested interest in your success.
So it's a mutual relationship whenever you want to get invested, and that's extremely important. So whenever you go also for your second round, you don't necessarily go back to that same investor. You go to a different one so you can have more exposure, and they're totally okay with that because that's going to lead to your success, right? You're going to have more exposure to that industry, more resources, more connections. So a lot of companies often have a huge array of investors so that they can have, more support.
Yeah. So interesting. I'm in the tech only in like accounting world. Like I know accounting tech, and I say I know accounting tech very loosely, right? Not like tech.
Yeah,
but like I don't know,
QuickBooks.
huh?
Like QuickBooks.
QuickBooks, and even like all the apps that sync and which apps sync well, and like a lot of the apps, they develop these great apps. But for example, if it's bringing over a sales receipt, but it's not bringing over the commission taken out of that sales receipt, or it's not adding sales tax, that sales receipt that was made in this app or in 17 hats or whatever system they're using, when it would sync over to QuickBooks, if it didn't add the sales tax, it's not going to match to any of the deposits made in QuickBooks. And so you have these discrepancies. And so I'm like, we're disconnecting these apps, not because they're not good on their own, but the sync creates more work.
Working. Yeah, that's an interesting point. That's interesting that you bring that up, because that's actually one of the coolest things about technology today is that there's so many integrations in between apps.
Yeah.
They integrate with each other with what they call APIs, but basically your QuickBooks can integrate with your actual payment processing software or whatever it is. I don't even know that space, but I'm assuming that it can.
Yeah.
Because to make it easier.
QuickBooks can it has a huge
I would
array
imagine,
of apps
right?
that sync to it.
I would imagine, because that's what
every industry.
That's what provides the most value to their users, right? To their customers. So they want to integrate, they want to partner, they want to work together. That's a huge benefit of technology today.
So that's where like I do have some experience,
Yeah.
but I don't know how it works like on the back end. Even setting up this, I'm like, how do I get both microphones to record? I had to call my assistant yesterday and be like, I don't even know the letters, AUDI, AUD something.
That's also actually a huge catalyst to new companies, is working in that corporate environment. And you can say, hey, QuickBooks is amazing, but it has this one little need. You can start a whole company out of it. Start an entire software company out of it because QuickBooks had this need. I don't know if they do, but a lot of companies start because somebody was in their corporate environment and there was some kind of, there was some friction, something that just wasn't easy, and they created an entire company out of it, which not just that company uses, but every company in the industry can leverage. And like that's the new normal is to have these new tools.
Yeah.
That's probably,
that makes so much sense too. Cause even when I go to these accounting conferences, like I'm going to one in a couple of weeks I'm actually speaking at, and the app, they have like an exhibition of apps, and they'll have anywhere of 500 plus apps exhibiting in these exhibit halls. And they're all apps for accountants, right?
Yeah.
That we can use to help, if you're in the Amazon space, here's all the different ways, the apps that you can sync to QuickBooks to help your Amazon filtration sync properly. Or if you're in the construction space, here's all these.
Exactly.
There's so many apps, and they bring them all to us because they know we're the ones that advise the clients on what apps to use.
Yeah.
So we're the ones that they're trying to sell, and so they bring all their best people, and you can just walk around and go to all the different apps. But that's how I choose my apps too.
Yeah, that's definitely.
It's going to these exhibit halls.
Yeah, so that's how the app started, right? Somebody had an idea, somebody that it could improve the business.
Yeah.
But then the next stage is more important than the app itself. You go around and sell it.
Yeah.
You have to be able to sell it.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. I love it. I'm not really like I am a tech person in that I use a lot of tech. I
think everybody's a tech. I mean, if you have an iPhone,
you're
a tech person. Right?
But I don't think of myself as like a tech person.
You don't.
Not
but
like,
I mean, compared to your parents.
when you talk tech,
I'm
like, you're up here. Let's like talk here so that I can at least follow the conversation.
Yeah, no, definitely. If you're in tech, I think, especially if you're a tech founder, you're starting a company, knowing who your audience is probably one of the most important things. Because I can talk, if I'm talking to you, it's one conversation.
Right.
And we could be talking about the same thing. But if I'm talking to a recruiter for a new job, that's a different conversation. And a good recruiter is going to know a little bit about the job that they're hiring for, but they're not a tech person still, right?
Right.
So that's a different conversation. When I'm talking to the actual hiring manager or the actual, the technology people at the company, that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm making an app, if I'm talking to other founders, that's a different conversation. If I'm talking to potential investors, that's a different conversation. So being able to explain the technology to different people on different levels is a completely underrated skill.
Yes, 1000%. I find that same thing in accounting too, right?
Yeah.
Like taking what I know about accounting language, found like, yeah, I think your AR is off and your AP is high and your undeposited funds is 200,000.
That means.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're an entrepreneur, so technically you would know what those things are, but you don't know the language that I'm using.
Yep.
Right? I'm saying that you have unpaid bills. There's people that owe you money, and somehow the way that you recorded the money that came into you was recorded incorrectly. Right? I can say that same thing with different language, and now you understand. So being able to translate what you have to say in a way that speaks to whoever you're talking to is absolutely an underrated
100%.
skill.
And I think communication, at its core, communication is like the biggest key to success, because no matter what you're in, if I'm raising money, I need to be able to talk. I need to be able to communicate to potential investors.
Yeah.
I need to be able to communicate to possible business partners. Once I start hiring, I need to be able to communicate to my employees.
Right.
I can say, hey, we need to make this. If I don't communicate well, they're going to make the wrong thing, or they're going to make it bad, right? So communication is 100% one of the most, I don't think it's underrated.
Over communicate.
Yeah.
That's what I remember when I hired my first assistant and I was telling her to give instructions to my VA, and she'd give instructions and I'd be like, you have to over communicate. And she's like, no, I did. And I'm like, I'd read it and I'd be like, nope. This would be good if you're talking to me because I have a reference point for the things that you're talking about.
Right.
My VA is in a different country. So like when you're talking to somebody who's not only are they ESL, but they have a completely different reference point, frame of reference for everything. They operate on a completely different grid.
Yep.
You need to over communicate, and I think that prevents a lot of friction. Because at first she'd be like, I said A and she did B. I'm like, yeah, because you didn't give enough detail about exactly what you're looking for until she knows you. And now that she knows you and she understands you, it was like, it's way more, in sync.
Right on. And that's actually one of the biggest reasons I took on a client in 2020. When he first pitched me the vision for his app he gave me, he described the entire app on a single page piece of paper. Now for
I'm not in tech and I know that's comical.
Yeah, that was comical. So like in some large companies, for example, in some of my WT jobs that I've had, to add a button on the screen with all the things that end up happening like in the cloud, to describe that button takes like 3 pages. So for him to describe an entire app on 1 page, I knew that job was going to be an exercise in back and forth communication and breaking down his vision into an actual app, into features, into something that I could actually make. So that was the primary reason for me taking on that job. And it was tons of back and forth for finding it and, actually understanding what he needed. There was some times where he would say, oh, just do it however you think. And then I would do it, go back to him, and
you're like, I don't like that.
He's like, that's not what I meant. And I was like, well, you didn't say anything. You didn't say what you meant. You told me to do it. Yeah. So that was also an exercise for him, because I said, if you design first, then I can only make it one time, as opposed to me having to make it, you tweak it and you say, okay, this is actually what I meant. And then I have to remake it. That actually becomes a lot more expensive.
Right.
So tech companies will hire people whose entire job is to take this idea, break it down into features, break it down into workable items that the engineer can actually implement. So the engineer can only can just focus on the technology side. They don't have to focus on how does it look, how does it work, how is it going to work for the user. They can just focus on that thing. And then, technology companies hire tons of people. They call them product, or the product department, just to take that vision into a workable item. But if you're a founder, if you're working at a startup, you have to wear multiple hats. Yeah. So a lot of times startup companies, I've worked at startups before where it's like 5 people, nobody in product. Somebody says, hey, can you make this? And the engineers have to do all of the work to design and to think about the user experience as well as develop. And it's fun, but it's also expensive. So when you have a startup and you're hiring, you're going to hire your engineers first. As soon as you have money, you can hire a product person. And there's levels to it. Right. You hire these people who seemingly don't do that much, but they allow engineers to focus on their work. And that's invaluable.
Yeah. So I think that kind of pivots into a different conversation. Like for the people who are like, I'm not in tech and I'm not building an app. I know you've had a business for a while and you have a lot of experience, both kind of balancing what it looks like to have a W-2 job and run your business at the same time. But what advice or any any stories or anything you want to talk about in terms of just like running your business?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think when it comes to creating an app or starting an app, I'm always reminded of this story by actually Robert Kiyosaki.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad, guys.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad guy. He has a name, believe it or not. So a lot of times people actually come to him and they'll have a product or they'll have, you know, an idea for a business, and they'll ask him, hey, do you want to invest in my business? And he'll ask them, well, why do you think it's going to be successful? Mm-hmm. And often a common response to that is, well, it's better than the competition. And to which he replies, well, can you make a better burger than McDonald's? Mm-hmm. And almost everybody says yes. Of course, because by a lot of opinions, McDonald's isn't very good.
Right.
You know, so even if you can't cook, you probably know somebody that can make a better burger than McDonald's. But almost nobody can make a better business than McDonald's, right? McDonald's is probably one of the 5 best businesses of all time.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, even today, their stock is near at an all-time high when most of the market is actually down. Mm-hmm. Like, they're crushing it. So since almost everybody can make a better burger than McDonald's, but nobody can make a better business than McDonald's, wouldn't that imply that it's not about the product, it's actually about your business model itself or the sales and marketing, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, that's actually really profound, because if you look at it from the other perspective, it's that you don't actually need to have the perfect product to launch your business. It's better to have a good product and great sales and marketing than it is to have the perfect product that nobody knows about. Mm-hmm. So having said that, you should focus on the quality of your product, but then immediately focus on your business model and how to do your sales and marketing to actually sell your product, right? Mm-hmm. And that's actually really stifling, I think, for a lot of entrepreneurs, because we think we need to have the perfect product to launch.
Yes.
If I'm making an app, and this was actually a problem in my first app, was that we thought we needed to have every feature to launch. We didn't. If you're starting a coaching business, you think you need to have everything figured out. You don't. You can learn on the fly, right? If you're starting a restaurant, you think you need to have the perfect menu or the perfect location. You don't. What you need is to launch and then get the feedback from your users, and then, you know, focus on actually bringing in revenue, bringing in profits. That's the number one most important part of the business.
Right. Yeah, I concur. As a recovering perfectionist myself, my word of the year was, I can't remember, is it this year or last year? I think it's this year, actually. Done is better than perfect. Yeah. You know, even working with like staff, you know, once you're big enough as an entrepreneur to have staff, people are never going to do things exactly the way that you do them. Right. And so wanting to have things done perfectly or constantly critique them to the point that what they're making looks like what you made, one, you're going to run yourself into the ground doing that. You're going to dishearten your staff doing that because they're going to feel like you don't trust them.
Absolutely.
You know? And so at a point, it's just like, okay, just let them run with what they do. And then after maybe a couple months, okay, go back and let's do like a SWOT analysis on the work.
Yeah, I love
SWOT.
Like,
we loved this. We didn't love this. Let's pivot this a little bit.
Exactly. You adjust it, you refine it, you get better. Yeah.
You can't just sit there and make everything have to be perfect. It's not going to get done. And it's going to be really hard on the people that work for you.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was actually one of the killers of my first app, was that we just never launched. We thought one of the co-founders was scared of having the idea stolen. So he did not want to launch until we were perfect, and we never launched. We spent 2 years creating this amazing app.
Wow.
And we never launched it. And it was a great learning experience. I wouldn't say that I got nothing out of it. I got tons out of it, but that was a perfect example, a perfect experience of you know, that model where we could have gone out after 6 months and probably got an investment and, you know, use that to help us. We tried to do everything ourselves. We tried to make it perfect, and we just never launched. So now I understand, like, hey, if you have an idea, go do it. A lot of people come up to me with an app idea, and I'm like, if you're serious, take 10,000, have someone on Upwork make it, and then go do it. You don't need me, because I'm expensive. Mm-hmm. If you're gonna hire me to make your app, I'm gonna charge you $100,000, and it's gonna take me way longer than somebody on Upwork, because I'm one person. They can hire a team for you. Mm-hmm. So if you're serious, go spend 10, 20, and go do it.
Yeah,
that's all you need.
Interesting. So from that experience of like, we built this, we spent 2 years building this whole thing and never launched it. Like, one, a business is a baby. So how did you feel after that? And two, how did you bounce back?
That was actually one of the worst days of my life, I think. And I mean, I've had a really great life, so it's not like I've had a lot of bad days. But I do remember us shutting down that business. I stopped dating a girl that I was dating at the time on that same day. And I went to go work out outdoors, and I got my backpack and wallet stolen by a homeless person.
Jeez,
All on the
what a
same
day.
day. What a day, right? Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I was kind of beside myself. I didn't know I didn't know what my next move was. It took me a couple months to kind of figure out what I was going to do next. And I ended up getting into investing, which was also a great, I wouldn't call it a pivot. I mean, investing and tech entrepreneurship are actually very related. So it was a great move in hindsight, even though that had its own, bumps and bruises. But
When you say investing, you mean stock investing, not like real estate I mean, I know
all
that
of
you
them. Yes.
do both,
Yeah,
but
so I
like
do
which
both.
one are you talking to in the moment?
I started with stocks.
You started with stocks.
Yeah, so I started with stocks, and that's actually very relevant because most of the biggest companies in the stock market are tech companies. So my my understanding of technology and how those companies operated allowed it really helped in the stock market.
Interesting.
And actually, if you're a tech CEO, it helps a lot to understand the stock market, because once you become a CEO, once your company's listed on the stock market, if you make it to that level, your number one job is to provide a return on investment for the shareholders. That's it, at all costs. So whether that means cutting staff, whether that means hiring to start new projects, your number one job is return on investment. So you need to understand the market. You need to understand how all these things work to become a successful company that's listed on the stock market.
You can learn that in K-dramas.
I wouldn't know anything about that. Yeah. But even before you get to that level, once you're early stage and you go out and start getting investors, it's all about providing value to them. That's the number one thing. So, if you're leading a company, you can have your vision. It can be rooted in whatever values that you have. Yeah. But once you start building that company, you bring on investors, you have to provide an ROI to them, or else they won't exist. Right. If there's no money, if there's no investors, there's no money. If there's no money, there's no company. So at some point you have to provide that value to them.
So when you started investing in stocks, like for me, I know nothing about stocks, so all my investments are done I pay somebody and they do all of that, right? Do you do all of that, the work of investing in the stocks yourself? Like you invest your own stocks in and out and you trade and do all of that?
Yeah, that's exactly how I do it. You can pay somebody to do it for you, but they're going to take their fee, and they might double your money and only pay you 10%. And that's probably how they operate. That's how they make their money. So, with my background,
but since I have no skill set in that, it's still a benefit.
Yeah, it's a benefit. You want your money to make money for you while you're not working, right? So, absolutely. For me, my ability to analyze these big tech companies and kind of just see how they operate, because even when I was building my first company, I actually took classes on how those big companies operate. Because the great thing about business is that you can copy what other people are doing.
Where did you take these classes?
Internet, online. I just found them. Yeah, YouTube University, or like different, professors would have online courses, and I just wanted to see how these companies operate. For example, Apple was the first $1 trillion company. Microsoft, Google, and Amazon are up there with them. They all use the same strategies.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're all technology companies, but they all kind of have a different market, a different industry, but they all operate the same way. They all try to operate as monopolies without appearing to be a monopoly to the government. So they kind of do their little tricks.
Little sneaky
sneaks. Yeah. So if you copy that as a tech company, you copy their models. Yeah. That's kind of how you become successful.
Interesting. Yeah. So I know that you balance having a W-2 job and running your business, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say to somebody who's doing that? Like, do you have any strategies or skill sets that have kind of helped you to do that well? Because you've done it long term. It's not like a short term. You're not like gig economy. This is my side hustle. Like you have a full on business and a full on job.
That's right. Yeah. I have. There's seasons where I've even spent more time on the side than I do on my W-2 job, and that's just like 50 to 40 hour types of weeks. For me, I'm blessed that it's always been symbiotic, and that things that I do for my business, things that I do for my app, help me at work. Things that I do at work help me. I can learn stuff on the job that I'll use in my business or on my app. And that speaks to what I said earlier, that when I interview for a job, I'm making sure that the job description has roles and responsibilities where I can learn things, where I can lead a team, where I can learn a new technology, where I can make something brand new, that I can take that information. I'm not stealing from them, but I'm learning. I'm growing as a person, right, and I'm using those skills to grow my business and to grow my app. And it goes both ways. So it's always been symbiotic. There's always things that I take from the app that I can take to the W-2 job. There's always things that I can take from the W-2 job into my business.
And do you have a strategy?
I highly recommend.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just highly recommend
doing that.
Leveraging
having
that.
both.
Yeah. I mean, especially if you're a W-2 employee, your job is using you. Like they're paying you, they might pay you well, but they're using you and they'll cut you if they have to. So you should use them. Use whatever resources they have. Find as many whatever mentors that they can, that are there. Use the technology to learn as much as possible. If they have trainings, take all of them and just leverage them as much as possible. So you can be, you grow as an individual, and whether that's for business or not, doesn't matter. I mean, you're going to grow.
Do you have like literal, like how do you balance having both?
So, I mean, I think it helps to come up with a system. I'm very routine based. So, I mean, I remember when I was working, it's easier now because of COVID and work from home, and a lot of people are doing stuff on the side when, I mean, they really shouldn't, but that's the reality of it. But when I first started my first app, we were still in the office, and I had a routine where I would wake up at 7 a.m., walk to work. I lived close to work, and I did that intentionally because I wanted to be able to walk there. I didn't want to have a commute. Out in Southern California, the traffic is terrible. So, so I didn't want to have a commute. So I would go to work. I would go there early. I would show up before everybody else so I could have some quiet time.
Yeah.
Whether that meant
I did the same.
Yeah.
I used to go to work at 6:30.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So I would show up a little after 7, and most engineers work a little bit of later hours. Some of them show up at 10. So the first couple of hours of the day were like a quiet time where I could focus on something that I needed to get done, or if I didn't have something pertinent, I could read. I could do some research on either the job or the app. It was a quiet time. I would get off of work around 3 p.m., go to the gym for 45 minutes.
You got off work at 3 p.m.?
Yeah, 7 to 3.
I would get off work at like 8. Go in at 6:30, leave at 8. That's why I left corporate.
Oh, America. Yeah. So, I mean, that was another thing about the job that I chose. I said
tech world hours.
Well, no, in tech world, there's a lot of overtime. There's a lot of overtime,
everyone that I know that's in tech world
now
works like 10 to 3.
Well, now it's a little different. But back then, I mean, tech was known for grueling hours. Yeah, especially if you work at a major company like Google or Amazon, they're known. I mean, you visited Google, right? Yeah, so what do they have there? They have tons of amenities, tons of restaurants. They have a full gym. They have all kinds of things. What they want is people to be comfortable at work.
They want you to just stay there.
So they don't have to leave, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's
I was like, you could live at the Google office. And we went to a couple, there's a whole bunch of them
people live in
Seattle.
the parking lot. People, because it's so expensive in Northern California or in the Bay Area, because there's so many engineers, there's so many tech companies that pay well. It's too expensive to live there. So people will buy a van, put a bed in it, have their clothes in there, sleep in the parking lot, and then they can shower at Google, they can eat at Google. Like, what else do you need? Yeah. And I don't think food. I would hope it's not a permanent thing for most people, but that's a great way to save money.
Yeah, to get there.
Yeah, so I've heard people like, I'm gonna work at Google for 2 years. I'm gonna sleep in the parking lot. I'm gonna make tons of money, save it all, and then once you have Google on your resume, you can go work anywhere. Yeah. And I would hope that you have the skills to work and to do your own thing too. But I mean, that really depends on the individual.
We went to the Google office last month in Seattle, and I was just blown away. I was like,
"Oh, you went in Seattle? See, that wasn't even the headquarters. The headquarters is in Mountain.
I know, and it was massive.
Yeah.
It had like floors and floors and floors of restaurants. There was a baby grand piano on the music floor, and then like games, booths. It was over the water. I was just like, what in the little? And I mean, I worked at the JCPenney headquarters office, which was also at the time massive. It's not, I think since then sold the building, but it was like the doctor's office was in the building. So you never had to have the excuse of going to the doctor. They provided
no way.
Doctors for
that's
you.
Next level. I've never heard
doctors
of that.
For you.
That is next level.
And it was significantly cheaper than going to your own doctor. So it's like, why would you ever want to go to your own doctor when you could go to the JCPenney doctor?
I never heard of that.
Yeah. And it was like, it was so cheap too. It was like less than $50 a visit. And then it was like, you never had to leave the office for appointments. Everything you needed was in the office.
Well, I wonder where
the gym. I would take Zumba classes at the home office. That was when I was teaching Zumba, so I was doing a lot of that kind of stuff. And daycare in the office, Starbucks in the office. Like, you never had to leave. Yep. And that was the point. That's I would go in at 6:30 a.m. and I would leave at 8 p.m. And even so, I would get scolded for not getting stuff done. Yeah. It was just.
Yeah. Awesome. So that was the environment for tech before COVID. And then there was a lot of work from home during COVID. They're trying to bring people back, but right now
everyone's so comfortable.
I really think they should, because there's just so at this point. At first it was convenient, but now there's a lot of distractions for people. And productivity is definitely dropping off. But I mean, right now employees have leverage because everybody still works from home, so they're like, why should I go back into the office?
Spend
I can
2
go
hours
work
in
somewhere
traffic.
else. Exactly. That's the
big one, I think.
That's the big one, yeah. Or even just, I mean, the little things like being able to do some laundry while I'm in a meeting type of thing. You know, for me, that's it. And of course, the
people
traffic.
With pets.
Yeah. And I think some people do end up working more. Some people, because they're at home, you just wake up and you hop on the computer, or you can hop on, you know, you can log off for the day and then somebody sends you a message and you hop back on type of a thing. But I think at this point, probably 10 or 20% of the employees are doing like 80-90% of the work.
But that's
Pareto
normal.
principle.
The 80-20 rule is
Pareto
real,
principle.
right?
Yeah.
20% of the people do 80% of the work.
Yeah,
that's just how
I think it's more like 10-90 with the work from home.
I could see it.
Yeah.
But that's normal. Even if you're running a business, like your own staff, you can expect the 80-20 rule, right? 20% of the people are going to make 80% of the profit or do 80% of the work. That's just life. I mean, everyone who's gone to college and had to do a group project,
that's true.
Knows how
that's very true.
Knows how this works.
That's very true. Everybody that works on a team, and I mean, that's tough. Hiring's hard. Hiring very
is so
difficult.
hard.
That's one thing about interviewing is that I don't think people realize is that the person giving the interview, conducting the interview, wants you to be the person that they hire, because you don't want to sift through 50 resumes.
Right.
Just
it's
to narrow
so
it down
much easier if you're just the one.
Just to narrow it down to 15 people that you have to call, just to narrow it down to like 5 in-person interviews. Like by that time, you just want the person to be the one.
Yeah.
And it's hard to interview and find those people.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of interviewing and
do you have any strategies?
Both
strategies
sides.
for the entrepreneurs?
Well, actually, yes. So I would suggest taking interviews and interviewing for jobs as much as possible, even if you have no intention of taking the job. So I used to do this, and I learned this from my old business partner, Herman, because he actually had an interview for Google, and his strategy was they gave him 2 months to prepare for it. And
2 months?
2 months. Yeah. Because they knew he didn't have a background in software, but they wanted to hire him for a software position. So they said, hey, we'll let you practice and get ready for it. And he took that time. He didn't just practice programming and software. He practiced interviewing. And in tech, interviews can be 4 to 6 hours long. You're interviewing multiple people. They're giving you challenges. It's very thorough.
Yeah.
So
one of my girlfriends is a Google recruiter. So
So
I was just staying with her, so I got to get a little glimpse of that world.
Yeah. So you know the deal. So his strategy was to apply. He applied for like 24 other jobs and got like 10 other interviews, and he was practicing with those interviews. So he ended up loving one of those jobs that he practiced with and going for them instead of Google. But once I learned that, I had never thought of that. So I started taking interviews, and I didn't actually apply. I've never actually applied for a job. I just have my LinkedIn with tons of stuff on it. And I get called by recruiters pretty much multiple times a week. And I often take the calls, and I'll often tell them, hey, just so you know, I have no intention of taking this job, but I'll talk to you and I'll talk to them. And that's been a tremendous help, just practicing the interview, because number one, you get to practice, answering questions. You get to practice explaining yourself and, how you're amazing, how you're good at things. But also you get to practice different audiences, right? Which I was talking about earlier. Because when a recruiter calls me, they have a certain level of technical knowledge, and I have to be able to make myself sound good to that level of knowledge. And then if I make it to the actual interview with the hiring manager, that's a different level. Once I make it to the interview with the actual technical person or the technical lead, that's another interview. So you get really good at explaining how you're good at certain things to different people, to different levels of people. And that's invaluable whenever you're networking, whenever you're marketing, and you go out and talk to different groups of people. You can explain yourself at different levels. So my biggest suggestion would actually be to interview as much as possible.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before.
Especially in engineering or in tech, because, engineers are known for not being the most social people.
Accountants. Hello.
Well, I think engineers got you guys beat.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Engineers they're known for being nerds, not social. They don't go out. That may be true.
They're known for being introverts and
so
antisocial.
even on the job.
Facebook picture of their cat.
I don't know about that.
No, I do.
You do. Wow.
Go on.
Yeah, so even on the job, if we're working on something, if it's a tough work day, we're not talking to anybody, right? We're in a closed room, dark room for 6, 7, 8 hours straight, not talking to anybody. We're just on the computer. So engineers aren't the most social people. So if you want to get out and practice those skills, the best way to do it is to interview. And that's how you get good at explaining yourself. That's how you get good at talking to people. And then you can expand that to like networking events, marketing events. So if I make an app, you know, and we just talked about, it's not about the product itself, right? It's about, can I sell and market
How do you sell the product?
Yeah, how do I sell the product? Well, you're going to need to do that at some point. You're going to need to talk to people. You need to tell as many people as possible.
Everything is sales.
Everything is sales.
Everything is sales.
And yeah, the best way that I got good at that was to interview, because I was explaining myself and the stuff that I made to all different levels of people.
Interesting. Whenever I go to accounting conferences or tell people I'm an accountant, the first thing usually out of their mouth is, but you don't look like an accountant. What's an accountant supposed to look like?
Oh yeah, I think I don't fit the prototype.
I don't think you do of an engineer either.
Yeah, definitely not with the tattoo or the clothes or anything like that.
Like, I'm too trendy for this shirt.
Yeah.
So fun. So just kind of to wrap up here, like what would be your one thing for the entrepreneurs, be them in tech, not in tech, that something that they could like implement today, or what's like a value add for them that would change their business or change the way they do business? We
didn't really talk about this, but like systemize everything. Like if you do something, I think Lisa mentioned this on your podcast. Like if you do or maybe you did, if you do something more than once, create a system out of it.
Yeah.
And in tech, if you're an engineer, if you're doing something more than once, you can automate it. You can create an app that does it for you, that makes your job easier. And then like we talked about earlier, if it's, you know, impactful enough, if there's some friction in my day-to-day job that I can make an app for, create a business out of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, systemize everything. And you know, I'm all about efficiency in systems. And if you can create more efficiency at your job and it can apply to other ones, then you can create an entire business out of it. You can create an app out of it.
Yeah. And I think something too that we had talked about, I don't know when we talked about this, but you and I talked about this at one point about like the differences between like entrepreneur or self-employed and business owner.
That's right. Yeah.
And like the business owner is able to delegate, the business can run itself.
Yeah. So
whereas like self-employed, you have to be the one that's doing the work.
Yeah.
Right?
So the biggest difference is that someone who's self-employed, the more successful they get, the harder they have to work. The more clients you get, the more accounting you have to do, right? Unless you hire somebody.
Right.
But even if you hire somebody, you're going to need to support them, right? So what you really need to do to create the business out of it is create a system that you can hire people for, and they just follow the system, so that system can function without you. And
you can go sit on the beach.
You can go sit on the beach, or if you are involved, the business grows with you. And it doesn't grow linearly, it grows exponentially because of your system.
And you can scale way faster.
You can scale way faster. Yeah, it's all about scaling.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you came. And why don't you tell the people like where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me on IG, Ricardo Rivero, Ricardo RVRO. And if you have any business ideas, you have an app idea, I mean, reach out to me. I'm always willing to talk to people. Willing to talk to people about their apps, their business ideas. Rarely do I want to take it on, but I mean, I'm open.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can talk to me.
Amazing. And we'll put his information in the description below. But that's a wrap for this one. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thanks for having me.
Another episode of the Entrepreneur Life Podcast. And remember, today is a great day to start a business. Bye.
Today's the best day. Let's go.